Absolutely. Hi, and so lovely to see so many of you here on the call today. Thanks for joining us. I am personally super excited and pumped for this discussion for a couple of reasons. One, as you know, am not was not born in America, and so I always love an opportunity to learn more about the census. And I know there's some of us that are American citizens and still don't know exactly how important it is. I have learned it's important, and I do my part and fill it in, but I am certainly excited to learn more about why it's important, and specifically how it's important to us in United Way. A few housekeeping things that I would like to bring your attention to. Please keep yourself on mute during the interview. Ask any questions in the chat box, and there will be poll questions that pop up during the event. And after everyone answers, Laura will share the results. So that's something to sort of keep you engaged and something to look forward to. I should have introduced myself, by the way. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Malini Rajput, by the way, Market President of Capital One Central Texas, and chair co-chair of Women United, and incoming chair of the board of United Way. So definitely very involved in United Way, and super excited that you're all here with us today. Without further ado, I am going to introduce you to my friend Laura, who will be moderating today's discussion. We'll tell you a little bit more about what we're going to learn. So Laura, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Malini, thank you. It's great to see your face. Thank you for being with us. Yeah, I am so excited. As I said a little earlier, I have been talking with Michelle and Jennifer about this idea, as we transitioned into a COVID world where we still wanted to come together, but we couldn't do it in person. And I said to them, I really want to learn more about the census and how we can help. And so we wove it into this summer program. We really appreciate y'all joining us today. I know that you are juggling. I know that you are juggling home life and work life. And if you have kids, you're, might be shuffling them around. If you have a dog, you're, letting that dog in and out all day long of the house. So I just appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I'm really happy to be a part of the Women United committee. I was in Mayor Adler's first administration when I started getting more involved with United Way. I would attend the Pay for Success task force. And at the time, the Pay for Success task force was convened by the United Way. Pay for Success at the time was a social innovative initiative that focused on having private lenders take the burden of the financial cost off of the government for social programs like addressing teen pregnancy or ending homelessness. And so that was when I first got familiar with United Way Austin. And I just was so proud to see them convening a really large group of organizations across the city who were all focused on this issue of achieving a pay for success model here in Austin. And it's been about 5 years that I've been volunteering and been a donor in my way. And I'm excited to be the incoming co-chair with Michelle Scott. And I don't know if Michelle's probably joining us later. Michelle is my co-chair. We are excited to be leading the Women United team this next year. And we're just really excited for some more programming that, focuses on one of the missions of, addressing and creating more high quality childhood education opportunities, but also focusing on other things that impact our community, like the census. And I see that we've got a poll question up now, so I'm super excited. I hope y'all will take this first poll question. How long have you been involved with Women United? And I'm just really excited about sharing more ideas and ways that we can be involved in the community And I hope that we'll have more of a discussion on that later on. But now I'm really excited to introduce you to the two ladies of the hour. First we have Mariana Salazar. Mariana is with United Way. She has got an extensive background in community organizing and activism and civic participation here in Austin. She is an immigrant and moved here some time ago to work with the Ending Community Homelessness Coalition to address our homelessness issues in Austin. And now I'm excited that she's going to be able to share what the United Way is doing in partnership with other organizations in town to really make sure that the census is focused on, and that we are trying to get as many people as counted as possible. So we've got Mariana and my good friend, Dr. Lila Valencia. My good friend Lila, oh my goodness, I cannot say enough amazing things about her. Whenever we have a squad happy hour, over Zoom or back in the day in person, she was always sharing just really interesting and thoughtful facts about our demography. She has got a PhD in applied demography. She was in the first cohort, the first graduating class in this PhD program in the country. It was one of the first in the country. And now she reports directly to our state demographer. She reports to our state legislature on all things demography related. So you all are in for a treat today as both Mariana and Lila talk to us a little bit more about why the census is important. And I want to give them a chance to, say hi, tell us a little bit more about themselves, and then also, tell us about your involvement with the census this year. So Mariana, you want to kick us off?
Yes, thank you so much, Laura, for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I joined United Way back in October, and it feels like ages. October 2019 in a normal calendar year would have been around the corner, but having COVID-19 in between, it really feels like it was a different world back then. I'm excited to have joined back then. And then prior to that, I've worked in the public sector. My background is in public policy. I have a master's in public policy. I've worked for counties, local governments, state governments, federal governments. I've worked locally and abroad. I'm from Venezuela. I worked in Colombia, El Salvador. That was prior to my life here in Austin. And funny enough, Laura, I actually work on that Pay for Success. I worked for 3 years. We must have not overlapped. I think you probably worked earlier than me, but I worked for 3 years designing what eventually became the first Pay for Success here in our region to end homelessness, and that the city of Austin endorsed, and it's currently been implemented. And it was a project of the Ending Community Homelessness Coalition. So I'm excited to know that you were involved. It's an amazing program designed. Anyways, after I worked at ECHO, I ran for local office, and that's where I got to learn everything about organizing, door knocking. I had done some community organizing back home in Venezuela, but I was learning and applying it here, and it was super fun. And even though I lost, I learned tons. I learned how campaigns work, and I'm excited to be applying those lessons learned through the campaign. I'll be telling you more about what I have been doing at United Way, but overall, I'm just very happy. I get to, use all of my background, both in public policy, data. I've been using, if you work in public policy, you have to work data all the time. So I've been kind of on every side of the census as a consumer, advocating for it. And I'm super excited to be promoting participation right now for the 2020 census. And I'll stop there for now.
Well, I guess I'll go next. And so thank you, Laura, for that really sweet introduction. I really miss our in-person squad hangouts. We don't get to enjoy Nikki's micheladas and Bloody Marys, but we'll have to make our own. I usually just go with opening the bottle of wine. But And thank you, Women United, for inviting me to be a part of this and giving me an excuse to put on some lipstick, which I hadn't done in a while. But I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to be talking about what's my my passion really. I heard about Dr. Steve Murdoch. He was the first state demographer in the state of Texas when I was working with the city of Austin at the police monitor's office. And the way he talked about the demography of Texas, the way he designed the applied demography program at UT San Antonio was really focused on the demographic future of the state, and was really very eloquently and creatively able to connect the success of all of our communities, especially communities of color, with the success of Texas. And so that to me was really inspiring, and what really drove me to be a part of that field of work. I used to be a psychology student, which looks at just the individual, but demography is much more about the aggregate and what all of us together really can work to build in a state like Texas. And so I guess I'm not sure if you're going to, I guess you're probably not going to go into that first question. Is that what we're doing now? Because I'll definitely talk a little bit about our office if that's what we're doing. But
yeah, well, and I want to make sure, I don't want to assume that there is a level of knowledge of the census. So I was thinking maybe if we could kick things off with a question, I guess, tell me about why it's important to be a part of the census, why we need to raise awareness about the census. Let's start there.
Sure, and I guess I'll just back up a little bit and just tell you about our office, because that part was the part that I was not sure if I should cover just yet. But so our office is the Texas Demographic Center, and it's the support staff for the state demographer, Lloyd Potter. He's the third state demographer. It's a governor-appointed position. We work really closely with the legislature, and we actually are mandated to produce annual population estimates between censuses and then population projections for the state and all of its counties. And so that's sort of our work as kind of a state agency. But as a state data center, we are part of a large network of data centers in the country that are supported and help to disseminate the Census Bureau's data and their data programs. And so in that way, we are very much invested in the decennial census, because essentially the decennial count is the building block of all of the programs and all of the statistics that we share with people. And so, the state demographer and myself, we travel around the state telling people about the demographics of Texas, but all of that is really built upon the decennial count as the base, as the foundation. And so without that, I really wouldn't have a whole lot to share. And so that's my selfish reason for why the census is important. But I'll tell you a little bit about what the census is and why it's important. And so as you probably know, and I'm pretty sure you know, but it's a count, right, of every single person who lives in the country. And this count is mandated by the US Constitution, and it's taken every 10 years. The first census took place in 1790. The results from the census are what's really important, right? And so the results are used to reapportion the US House of Representatives, and it determines how many congressional seats and how many electoral college votes each state will get. And then results from the census are also used by state and local governments to redraw district lines. Now, these district lines range from congressional districts to legislative districts down to school board and county districts. So like all of those little fine lines. And they're meant to be redrawn to adjust and accommodate for demographic shifts that have happened since the last decennial census. Additionally, the census data are used to inform the distribution of over $1.5 trillion in federal funds for things like school meals, after-school programs, Medicaid, Medicare, highway construction and planning, you name it. Even parks are informed and supported by census-derived data. In fiscal year of 2017, Texas received $101 billion of those federal dollars for those programs in our local communities. And then lastly, businesses rely on census data to determine the location of headquarters and storefronts, recruiting, market research. And so this is a long way to say that basically from the moment you wake up in the morning to the time you get back, home from work, you are involved with some sort of census derived experience. Driving on public roads, how far your local corner, coffee shop is for your latte in the morning, the quality and condition of the school that you drop off your kids, if you have kids, how long your commute is. All of those things are directly related to decennial census.
You said $1.3 trillion.
1.5, yeah.
Oh, 1.5, sorry. Wow, even bigger. Okay, so, I know that our brains are already naturally going to this next question. And Mariana, I want you to weigh in here. So let's talk about the consequences for what happens if there is an undercount. And Lila, you addressed what's at stake, but the consequences seem very real to me. Let's maybe focus on that a little bit. And Lila, jump in if you want.
I thought Mariana.
Sorry, I thought it was for Lila.
I know, I do this all the time. I'm like.
we can both answer, but you go first, Mariana.
That's fine. Well, if you think about, you were talking about the importance, right? You talked about representation, you talked about distribution of resources, and you talked about the data. So just thinking about, the opposite of true, if it's that important, because all of those things are determined, then if we don't get counted, then we miss out on that much, right? We miss out on good data for good decision making. We miss out on having people that can represent us, having the right number of people that can represent us according to our population. We miss out on the resources that should be coming to our community, but will not because we're not counted. And to be honest, I mean, those resources, they're not like, people sometimes think it's like, oh, federal resources, like federal resources are our own resources. They are the ones we pay through taxes. When we pay taxes, they're all get, kind of consolidated, and that's what the federal government uses. So we're missing out. If we don't get counted, then we're missing out on what belongs to us, our own money that needs to be coming back with us. So that's kind of at the broad level. At the more specific level is like one of the biggest consequences is that the decennial census informs decision making for 10 years in a row. So right now we're at 2020. So for the next 10 years, if I'm not counted, I'm not counted for the next 10 years in the distribution of resources, in the distribution of power through congressional representations and representation at every level of government and data, right? And so a good example here right now is, for example, schools here in Austin, right? Schools have been closing, and some of that have to do with a decreasing population, youth population, which I don't want to get convoluted, but it's like, it's probably, it's also probably related to an affordable housing crisis that we're living. But let's kind of keep it simple. If we don't count our children right now, even, that data is what decision makers use all the time. So you can see how you can see more and more schools being closed when in fact we need more schools, right? But if our children are not counted, then that's what it's been used for the next 10 years. I mean, there's other data that people can use other than the census data. I mean, for some federal programs, it is the only data that can be used. For local decision-making, they can be using other data, but frankly, the census is the golden standard for the data. So when we have a number that it's wrong to begin with, it's not accurate to begin with, then all of our decision-making is flawed. And I would say one last thing about missing out on the census. And the thing is, right now, we are living in such tough times, right? And, COVID-19 came and, exposed all the inequities that, we were living before, but that are now so opened. And it is through census data that accurate census data that will be able to fight those inequities, right? Like the census data is basic. It asks 10 questions. And part of it asks about gender. It asks about your race and ethnicity and your age. And if you think of those 3 specific demographic pieces of information, that's how, the government can tell, how many women versus men, how many Latinos, how many African Americans, how many Asians, and so forth. And so that forms the basis of our population, right? So, and that's what allows to then go ahead and say, well, this is how we know that disproportionately Latinos are affected right now through the coronavirus, right? Because we know they make up this percentage of the population, and yet they're being hospitalized at this percentage, right? But if our baseline is off, that disproportionality will not be accurate, and it's probably going to be less than what it actually is. I mean, this kind of can be counterintuitive here because we're trying to fight racism, so we want it to be smaller, but we want it to be truthful to be able to fight it, right? So if we're not being counted, we can get in a situation where we can think that we're doing okay, or we're not doing so bad, when in fact we are doing. We need to be fighting way more inequities. So it's important from that equity angle too as well. And it forms the basis for fighting for discrimination clauses in the housing arena, and in so many arenas, frankly. So we miss that on so many different levels.
And I definitely want to give Lila a chance to also weigh in, and then I want Mariana to kind of talk to us a little bit about what's happening at the local level, especially since we are now in a pandemic situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in 2010, and I think Mariana was trying to address sort of like the counterfactual, like we know that this is what's important. What if those things weren't there, right? And we don't have to look too far back. If we can just look back at the previous decennial census, we know that we undercounted in Texas about 250,000 people. And some of those groups are, and I say it's a net undercount because some groups are actually overcounted, and I can, talk a little bit more about that, but it's a net undercount, and it was about 250,000 people. And so right now we estimate that there's about 25%, 1 of 4 Texans, or 7 million Texans, are living in what are called hard to count neighborhoods. And the reality of it is that projections out of the Urban Institute right now are actually saying that in 2020, Texas could actually undercount 500,000 people. And if we were to undercount just 1% of our state's population, we would be missing out on $300 million per year, that's every year, for the next 10 years. And that's just in Texas. And so those are the dollars that are at stake, right? But we also know that those dollars directly translate into programs and services for people who need it most. And so, and then in terms of political representation, lines are meant to be redrawn so that they can reflect the changes in the demographic makeup of the population. But if we know that there are populations that are differentially undercounted, and so not everybody is undercounted in the same way. Like I said, some populations, specifically non-Hispanic whites, tend to be overcounted, whereas communities of color are undercounted. Then that means that even if the redistricting process were the most fair redistricting process that ever existed, if we know we have an undercount of communities of color, their political representation is already diluted. And so those are the sorts of things that are at stake, right? If we get an undercount.
Yeah, your congressional member all the way down to your city council member. It impacts that broad spectrum of representation. Those are some overwhelming numbers. Wow. Well, I mean, Mariana, you've obviously had to adjust, right, at the local level. So talk to me about, the work that United Way is doing to adjust in this pandemic world. I know that in past counts, they've been able to go door to door, and now that's shifted. So talk a little bit about what's going on here in Austin.
Great, yeah. So, you know, back last year, funders came together and realized that the state of Texas was not gonna set aside funding for the census, you know, making sure promotion of the census, and this was not true in other states. Like California had set aside, I can't remember right now, but 100 million, 200 million, something along those lines, and we hadn't set aside anything, so they worried about the resources, and they rightly worry, because right now, even as the census has deployed, has an army deployed, and they're about to go out again, even they are budget constraints. They're always coming to us. It's like, we don't have flyers. And I'm like, oh my goodness, the Census Bureau staff doesn't have flyers. How is that possible? So anyways, to backtrack, funders came together recognizing a huge need and a kind of a gap in services that would be needed to promote participation. They set aside the St. David's Foundation, the Episcopal Health Foundations, Austin Community Foundation, among other smaller funders too. They set aside close to $500,000 to give out to promote participation in Central Texas, and that's when I was hired in as part of that effort. We gave out. I was hired in October, immediately after we did an RFP, and we ranked organizations, and we gave out close to $500,000 in grants to 18 organizations, and they were all throughout Central Texas, you know, the 5 counties: Bastrop, Hayes, Caldwell, Williamson, and Travis. And we gave funds to AASD, Austin Community College, the Housing Authority of the City of Austin, Mano Amiga, which organizes communities in Hayes County. So it was like a diverse group of organizations. And the idea was that they would be promoting census participation. And they have been doing it beautifully since January. That's when our grant started. But of course, March 12th came along, and that was the first day that the census opened, and it should have been a big day. And I remember that day packing things, because that's when we were sent home. I remember it was like a Thursday. I had all day lineup on interviews with the media, because it was a huge day, right? And then it ended up not being that important day that we wish it would have been, because we were about to, you know, be tied to our home. So since then, it's been 3 months, I guess, and our life has completely been disrupted, right? But we have been able to manage. Most of our grantees were able to switch to digital strategizing, switch their budgets. We allow them complete flexibility to re-strategize, and it's been tough. I mean, organizing works well when you go door to door. I mean, that's kind of the most effective in campaigns. Door to door, like that's like the first thing that works the most. The second thing, it's probably mailers, and then the other stuff is like maybe text campaigns, call campaigns, and that's kind of what we've switched. So people have been doing a lot of outreach through Facebook Live events, and then just generally calling folks, and then kind of digital home visits that some of our organizations are doing with their clients. But it's been tough. We still have about, I guess, 5 months. I haven't even in July. I can't count in English. I'm sorry. Julio, agosto, septiembre, octubre, 4. I have 4 months basically, and we have about 100 census tracts that still have less than 50% here in our Central Texas region. So we have our work cut out. Things are starting to open. The Census Bureau is starting to be allowed to now do in-person meetings. They're struggling even finding space to train their own folks that are going to be sent out to be knocking on doors. But I think things are going to change over the next 4 months. So the work remains to be done in terms of making sure that those communities that are hard to count, that Lila was talking about, where an impact of an undercount would be the greatest, making sure that we can get those communities up and to a reasonable self-response rate.
Yeah, that is a really great update. Thank you. And you mentioned that 100 tracks. So a track is like a a neighborhood or like a precinct for those who are less familiar. Yeah, you're shaking your head. So they're under 50% counted. So I am a competitive person, and I want to ask Lila, how are we comparing to the rest of the state and even the country?
Sure.
And yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'll hold off on answering till the poll goes up, so I don't give people the answer. But
right. Answer real quick, and then we will tell you.
And then everybody will get it right.
Yeah.
So Austin has been doing better than the state, but we're still trailing the country. And so I guess depending on how you look at it, it's like, yay, we're beating Texas, but boo, we're not even doing as well as the rest of the nation, right? And so Travis County actually has a response rate. Oh, yeah, a lot of you are right on the money. Travis
Nice.
County, yeah. Travis County has a response rate right now of 60%, 60.2%. So that means that of all of the households that have been invited to participate, so these are households, it's not percentage number of people, 60.2% of them have responded to the census. And that's in Travis County. For the city of Austin, it's 59.9%. And so the metric that we're using to sort of compare, how good is that, is the 2010 response rate. And so in 2010, Travis County had a response rate of 66.2. So we are a full 6 percentage points below our 2010 goal. And the city of Austin was 66.7, so more than 6 points from their 2010 goal. Now, the state of Texas is at 56.2%, and that gives us a ranking of 41st. So we're really among, the lowest performing states in the country. The U.S. has a response rate of 61.5%, and then the highest state is Minnesota at 71%. And so you can see that there is like a big difference. So yeah, and both Austin and Travis are higher than Texas, but we're still trailing that US average. And it's not that simple either, because you can further subdivide the response rates by those communities that are hard to count, right? And so Asians in Austin are doing pretty well. In Travis County, their response rate is 63.8. But Hispanics have a response rate of 55% and African Americans of 52%. And so that leaves a lot of households of color that really remain to respond to the 2020 census.
Yeah. So, I'm competitive, but those are statistics that need work. We need to work on those. So, both of y'all talk to me a little bit about how the deadline has been extended and give us some hope. How can we increase those numbers before the new deadline, and what are the best ways for this group to be involved? And then we're going to go into these amazing questions. I knew y'all would have so many questions for these two amazing leaders. So we'll get into those in a minute.
Laura, I'm a Texas demographer, so if I'm not talking about economics, I usually don't have a very good story to tell. It's not very hopeful numbers. Like our response rates are pretty low. They've been lagging, and they've actually been remaining really stagnant over the last, since Census Day. On Census Day alone, our response rate went up by like 3 percentage points. We were already trailing the country by about 2 percentage points. Now we trail the country by a full 5 percentage points, and we're adding 0.1% of a point every day. And so even at that rate, we wouldn't reach our 2010 response rate till the end of September. And yes, we have till the end of October to complete the decennial census. But we really need to, understand what's happening. Why aren't response rates going up? And especially in hard to count communities. And I think that there are, this decennial census is very challenging. We are up against, like Mariana mentioned, lower funding. We always knew Texas was going to be hard to count. It's so diverse in terms of geography, right? Like we're so huge, but it's also diverse in terms of demographics. So we knew it was going to be hard to count. but then the 2020 census is underfunded. They're working on a 2010 budget. Then there was the, citizenship question that added this whole air of politicization that had never been associated with a decennial count before. And then we're using a new method of online response, which a lot of people now have internet access, and that's why the Census Bureau moved in that direction, but it proves to be a challenge as well. And so we're really trying to understand and working on some efforts that hopefully Women United can get behind and help us promote. Since, like Mariana mentioned, there is no statewide campaign, we work very closely with Texas Counts. They're a statewide philanthropic and community-based organization collaborative that came together because we recognize the huge stakes for Texas. And in the coming, this coming week, we're going to work to really remake and re-energize the response and motivation to respond to the 2020 census by going on a virtual road trip. So we're going to be visiting all parts of Texas, and we're going to be ending up here in Central Texas on Friday, the 26th. And so that's absolutely one way, to be involved. But I'm going to pass it on to Mariana so she can share sort of more ideas here locally, and then I can add on some of the more kind of blanket suggestions that the Census Bureau offers to any partner that wants to get involved.
I'm in kind of like Laura, I'm like competitive, and I think numbers really drive me, and I think in general, I think that kind of works. So I am working right now on kind of a new training so folks can go out and train and can promote participation within their block or neighborhood. I'm going to be using Nextdoor as a strategy. So the idea is I'll be showing people a map on see how they're doing so we can see in my own neighborhood, in my own census tract, how am I doing? And I can see how neighborhoods are doing. So I could even be like, hey, we're here at 50%. And guess what? That other neighborhood across the highway, it's doing so much better. We can beat them. Or, we suck. Like, we're at 50. We don't even have to compare ourselves to anyone. We can do way better. It's worked. I have been doing that within my own Nextdoor. And I saw a response. Lila, one day I posted something and it was at 54.3. And then everyone who would, I posted something in my neighborhood. I said, look, we're at 54.3. We can do better. And then people started liking it and, whatever it is, icons that you use in Nextdoor, I can remember, happy faces. And whoever would click on it, then I would be like, private message them, have you completed the census? He's like, no, but I'm going to do it now. Thanks for reminding me. And then an hour later, have you completed? Yes, I just completed. Okay, one day, can you guess, Lila, how from one day to the other, how much, that little engagement in Nextdoor made a difference?
I'm going to say 3 percentage points.
Okay, we went from 54.6 to 60.3.
Wow.
And guess what? I only did it one day, and then I never did it again. And then it stayed there. It's still at 60 something, like very low.
that is very impressive. I told you the state has been going up by 0.1 percentage.
So what I did was I posted a photo of myself. I told, a personal story on how, my children go to this, I live next to the LBJ high school. My children go to this school. Like, I want better schools. I want better parks. I mean, just related to the needs that we want to see and kind of tie it briefly to the census, but it was like hyper local, hyper personal, hyper relatable. And I think that's what makes a difference. And that's what I'm excited. I'm going to be training people how to tell others to complete the census from their own perspective, posting a selfie of themselves within the neighborhoods. So that it's not an institutional push, an institutional message, but it's like, hey, I care. Do you want to care with me? This is for our own neighborhood. And I think it can make a difference. So that's where I'm going. I'm excited to be training people to do this themselves. I'm printing a bunch of flyers so that later on, if people want to be kind of run mini local campaigns on their street, and in addition to posting on Nextdoor, they want to leave flyers on the door without even talking to people, but just leaving it there. I'm also going to do a handwritten note. I'm like, hey, I'm Mariana. I live in this street. I can help you answer any census questions. Text me if you want, and I'll staple it to that flyer and then just leave it there. Maybe I'll even put a photo of myself. And I think it can make a difference. People always respond to like personal notes. I might do it with my kids on their own handwriting. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm going with this.
That's awesome. I mean, and I do really believe, and it shows in your data, that when you personalize it and show that there is a person, you know, in the neighborhood who's reaching out, it's just so much more impactful and powerful. I mean, it's kind of like campaigning, political campaigning. You know, you have to personalize it and you know, tell the story about why it's important. So, I mean, I knew this was going to fly by. Y'all have so many great questions. What I'm going to try and do is go through and let's try and answer some of these questions. You know, I want to definitely hear from both of you. Is the fear of the immigration authorities a big issue? Just anecdotally, or even some numbers that you might be able to throw out.
Well, Mariana, what I know is that it's a fear, but it's not a talking point that people want to focus on, right? And when I say people, I mean the people who ask about it, the people who are scared about it. It's kind of a psychological phenomenon where if you start to talk about that scary thing for too long, it gets even scarier and scarier. And so you want to quickly say, no, the citizenship question or any immigration status question is not on the census questionnaire, and then quickly move on to the things that directly affect them, like the quality of their schools, you know, the programs like SNAP, WIC, Medicaid, Medicare, all of those things. And so that's at least what we found from, NALEO has done a lot of, that's the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. They've done a lot of work with the Latino community to understand sort of barriers to participation in the census. And they've found that that's what is most effective, is to directly say it's not on there and then just quickly move on, because if you talk too much about it, then people start to get scared.
Yes, I agree, Lila. I think in my experience, you know, we fall under many different buckets of people, like even as a Latino, right? You know, you can be undocumented, not undocumented. Even if you're undocumented, you might have had a horrible experience with ICE or within your own community. So I think it's the individual the response to how you talk about it with someone really depends on their individual experiences. So I try to gauge if I'm doing like one-on-one work. I think generally, yes, in general, you don't want to be saying that or being that the front message if that's not in people's minds, right? You don't want to scare them if that's not, but if it is, then you need to address it, right? And so for those that are very fearful, and I think I've heard, I think maybe not here in Travis County, but you know, think about Hayes, think about Bastrop. I mean, think about Bastrop and how uncool the police has been with folks there. I mean, if you've been reading, you know, even from last year, like they have been stopping folks with tickets and then they have been putting them in jail, right? And so I think the experience here in Travis is very different from other like more conservative counties. So for them, it's like, it's the biggest fear. They don't want to. And so I do think the work is, you know, sharing as much information as possible. And what do I share? I share that the census is only for statistical purposes, and statistical purposes only, you know, the Census Bureau is a statistical agency that they want the data to come up with demographic information in general, not to share any individual level data. They cannot share. It's against the law for them to share your personal information. I tell folks that, you know, that information is never shared with ICE, it's never shared to determine your eligibility, or, you know, people are concerned right now about the public charge thing. So I share all of that. I also share that what you're sharing is very minimal information. You're sharing your phone number, your name, your date of birth, and frankly, if any agency wants to find that information, they can probably find it and they wouldn't have to go through the Census Bureau. So, you know, it's tough.
But those are
I
all.
do hear in Hayes County in particular that this has been the #1 thing, and they're like, no way, I'm not participating. And
Yeah.
then there are some instances where people, they haven't just participated because they still don't know about it, or they still don't know about its importance. And in those cases, we do address those, but it's very tough. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I admire the effort that you're taking, and we're going to go into a little brief breakout. But before we go into the breakout, I just want to flag that Jennifer did post the virtual road trip so that y'all can click on it, and the training that Mariana is doing on Nextdoor. So 2 different links that y'all will hopefully learn more and participate in if you can. And I think Jennifer is going to take us into a little breakout where we can dig more into these details, ask more questions, and then we're going to come back before 2:30. So sit tight, don't click on anything. You're just going to be automatically moved in to another room. Y'all, that was so much fun, even though it was very brief. It was very fun.
Yeah,
Thank you for participating in the breakout. I just want to quickly say, Dr. Lila Valencia, Mariana Salazar, thank you for giving us your time and energy. Thank you for all of the hard work that you were doing in this important effort. I know that everyone learned a ton from you, and we're going to send out the links afterwards so that they can, just keep staying involved with the ways that you mentioned.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ladies. This was lovely. And I love the breakout rooms. It was awesome. We're like, it's like speed dating.
I know, the breakout room was good. I am just going to take, I'm conscious of the time. I think we have 1 minute to go. So I personally also, Laura, always so lovely to hear from you. Thank you. But Mariana and Dr. Valencia, thank you. As I personally shared in our breakout room, very informative for me, someone who perhaps, didn't know why we were filling in the census. And I think a lot of what I learned from this session was perhaps folks are not filling it out because they don't want to, but more so because they don't know why. They don't know why, and they don't know how important it is and what we're utilizing the funds for. So I think if we can spread the good word about that and do our part to help folks understand why it's so important, I know that we can get that number up, given we have some competitive folks on the line with us today. So again, thank you to all of you for sharing your time with us today. Now more than ever, it really is important to invest in United Way's work. United Way has been fighting the inequalities that COVID-19 has exposed in a bigger way for decades. And instead of striving to get back to normal, let's reimagine what the new systems could look like. Let's create better systems that work for everyone, starting with making sure that every single person in Texas gets counted. The census has such a profound impact, as you heard today, on our community it's not just a short period of time, it's the next 10 years. Think about that for a second. A lot of us didn't fill, and I know in our breakout we talked about this as well, a lot of us didn't fill it out 10 years ago. So it really, someone born today will be in 5th grade by the time they do another census. I mean, let that sink in for a moment. Thank you to those attendees who are already Women United members. I see your faces, so thank you. Your investment allows us to continue this crucial work. If you are not yet a member of Women United, please visit our website. The link is in chat, I believe. So please look at that link, learn more, and how you can donate today. Women United members give $100 or more a month, or $1,200 annually to be a part of this incredible group of women. And we would love to have you. So if you'd like to learn more, please either you can fill in the chat box or reach out to Jennifer Woods at jennifer.woods@uwatx.org. That's Jennifer Woods at uwatx.org. Thank you again for joining us. And personally, I just want to say how much it means to me as incoming board chair of United Way to see you all here, to feel so passionate about, and just I want to thank United Way for linking the census with the great work and the programs that we continue to do and making it real for everyone on the line. So thank you so much. I I'm going to leave you with that message that I personally am so glad that you're all here today. Thank you.
Bye. Thank y'all.
See you next time.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Malini.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.